Today we're going to be talking about Fenax and all the crazy things that he is capable of inside the game. So if you want to see more content like this, make sure to go ahead and hit the subscribe button and like the video. It helps YouTube promote this content to everybody else. Let's go ahead. Let's hop into it. Who is Fenax? Well, he's a champion that I've been wanting to do a showcase on for quite some time. I was hoping to eventually have him +4 empowered, as well as the 6-star awakening that I have on him. Unfortunately, the +4 has not happened quite yet, so we're just going forward with the +2 and then the 6-star awakening that I have on him. We're going to be talking about some of the, more technical aspects of his kit, as well as just use cases and all those sorts of good things. Let's hop into his kit. First of all, we're also going to be talking about the multipliers on this kit as we go through it. So we have an A1 here, which is pretty basic. Attacks one enemy, places an extra hit if the target has any debuffs, and enemies killed by this skill cannot be revived. This seems very basic. It's just, it could be a double hitter A1, might place a block revive. He probably doesn't do much damage, right? That's where you would be wrong. This is one of the hardest, if not the hardest hitting epic skill in the game based off of damage alone. He has very solid base stats of 1454 on the attack. This has a 4.1 times multiplier. That's on the single hit. If he places an extra hit, that's immediately going to boost it to an 8.2 times attack multiplier. For if you're not familiar with attack multipliers inside the game, large attack multipliers are considered like, 6 times attack multipliers on 6 times hitters, right? Or on single target hitters. So 6 times attack multiplier on a single target damage dealing ability is considered a large god tier attack, essentially. Now you consider that this guy also places a block revive with that skill. It is absolutely phenomenal. On his A2 he has an AoE, has an 80% chance of placing a block buffs debuff for 2 turns, places a block active skills for 1 turn if it does not place a block buffs. Very useful for crowd control and of course, just placing block buffs, especially for something like Faction Wars, for example. Decreases bomb debuff detonation cooldowns by 1 turn when Talia is on the same team. Talia is going to be another epic champion from the Sacred Order. She's not that good. I did use her as my arena nuker for some time, but I've never used her since. She doesn't have very good multipliers or anything like that. This has a 3.5 times attack multiplier, which for an AoE skill is definitely pretty decent. And finally, we get to an attack one enemy has a 60% chance of placing the big version of decreased defense and the big version of decreased speed for 2 turns. Now again, this might seem pretty simple. You might think, oh, he probably doesn't do much. You're wrong, once again, because this has a 6.7 times attack multiplier. This guy just casually has some of the best attack multipliers in his kit out of any champion in the game, let alone epic champions. And that's obviously not counting enemy max HP skills or, multi-hitters. We have somebody like a Teox coming in, right, who can obviously output damage higher than this. But this guy is absolutely sensational for basically everywhere in the game. Let's go ahead, let's take a look at those masteries. I come down over here to Helm Smasher to have an additional chance to ignore an extra 25% of the target's defense. So that's going to be in addition to, of course, the lethal set that I have him built out in. I do have him coming into Master Hexer as well, so if he does place a decreased speed and decreased defense, he has a chance to extend that. That's how I'd recommend building him. Obviously, I'm building him for damage, so I don't necessarily have a whole lot of accuracy on him. So I got some accuracy boosting masteries here. And then, of course, we did get Evil Eye. I always get this on most of my champions, even the damage dealers, so that as we hit people with our A1s, it's going to push back their turn meter a little bit and just make it easier for us to cycle our turns. And then we do, of course, have a 30% chance of increasing the turn meter by 10% when a debuff cast by him is removed or expires. Another one that you might want to take is essentially Kill Streak, where he's going to increase his damage by the by 3%. So he's going to increase his damage inflicted by 6% in the arena and 3% in all other locations for each enemy killed by this champion in battle. Now it is going to stack across each round, so if you're progressing through wave-based content, he is going to get up to that 12%, which is pretty nice. And then of course we did get Methodical as well, which is going to increase the damage inflicted by his default skill by 2% each time it is used during battle. So those two alone combined is going to give you a major increase to his damage output over time. Now I wanted to talk about the technical aspects of this champion because there are a few things to mention. So first of all, you can run him with everything else turned off except his A1, and he's going to be perfectly viable. So if you're bringing in a defense down champion or something like that, right, Again, this is going to have the 8 times multiplier on it, so 8.2 times attack multiplier, which is absolutely insane. And he is also going to be placing block revive. So a few areas that's useful, for example, inside the ice golem, if you're trying to get rid of the minions, right? If you're trying to get through waves that have a lot of revivers, or, you know, even like a Lydia on the enemy team or something like that, especially in Doom Tower, Insidious, and Tranos now, this guy can be absolutely fantastic. Or, of course, in the arena, like we'll show later, I myself am a late game player, but I have still gotten my ass kicked by this guy built out inside Stone Skin and a damage dealing set in the live arena. I seen him just absolutely sit down my Harima, which is pretty insane, especially considering her passive, right? So very, very strong champion. For masteries, what do we recommend? Well, if you have him 6-star awakened, really the only way to go is going to be crushing Rend, right? So each round, essentially at a full awakening, he's going to ignore 1% defense for every 10 levels, so he's ignoring an additional 6% defense against champions, and then he's ignoring anywhere from, you know, like 5% to 30%, depending on what level of enemies you're facing. So I know, for example, in Doom Tower, sometimes the enemies will be like level 350, you're just straight up ignoring 35% additional defense, right? So that is pretty insane. If you don't have him fully awakened, what I would recommend actually building him out in these days is Nature's Wrath. So that's going to increase the damage inflicted by this champion for every debuff they successfully place. Of course, with his A3 and his A2, he does have a large amount of debuffs that he can bring to the battle. If you're running this guy in something like Hydra, he's going to be very, very viable there, right? Because he does have AoE block buffs, he does have decreased defense and decreased speed, albeit single target. But if you're bringing a debuff spreader or something like that, he can work very, very well inside that sort of a team composition. Let's go ahead, let's take a look at the gear. Now, forewarning, this might be shocking. This is sensitive content. Viewer discretion is advised because this guy is pretty damn built. He has 6,000 attack, 293 speed, 283 crit damage, and then, you know, just a measly 220 accuracy. That's kind of whatever. Now, obviously, there's going to be stats better than this out there. However, keep in mind, he's not fully empowered, right? So he doesn't have the extra plus 2, which would give him a little bit more, I believe, speed, which would get him almost to that 300 speed, which is pretty insane. And then he, of course, does not have the you know, the best gear, essentially, right? Because he is running in a lethal set. However, this is a 5-star chestplate. I've kind of talked about this before. This is my best lethal set. I do use it all the time on my Wukong. This upper gear, at least, basically just is my Wukong gear set. So we're kind of going to see a nice comparison there. But this would be better at a 6-star, and it'd be better with attack percentage ascension. So there's still ways that you can min-max this gear. Of course, the sub stats aren't min-maxed on a lot of this gear either, right? So there's just better builds that are possible, but this is a very, very solid build. We do have crit damage on the amulet, attack on the banner with a nice speed roll there, and then we do have attack with some attack substats on the ring as well. Now, for the first initial phase here, what we're going to do is we're going to hop into Dragon 20 as normal, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to do damage test with this guy. So I did take the liberty of actually rebuilding my Lydia as well. So Lydia is now going to be faster than my damage dealing champions, which is pretty nice. So for some of you that might have been watching before, you might have seen, for example, when, you know, I was trying to do a damage test and my Lydia was actually slower than the damage dealer, and it was just kind of awkward, so I had to go out and use Uko instead. So we got that remedied. We're going to be doing proper damage tests now. Let's go ahead. Let's do Dragon 20. This is kind of just a traditional area where people have done damage tests with their champions, so we're not going to change that up. We're not reinventing the wheel here. We do have Eostrid coming in as well for increased attack on there. Got the defense down and the weaken going across everybody as well. Now let's go ahead and take a look at what his A1 can do. Now keep in mind he is going to be weak affinity here as well, so we might see some weak hits. Let's go ahead and target the Tyrell. Boom, 148k on the initial hit. That would have been a 300,000 damage if he didn't weak hit on the second hit. The weak hit still did like 25k damage, and of course we do get the block revive as well. We're going to go ahead and just keep going here, essentially, since he is just a single target damage dealer on that particular skill. Eostrid coming in with some pretty decent damage as well, making him look a little bad, but it is what it is. We're back on him here. Let's go ahead and see if we can get a normal hit on the Apothecary, for example. Let's go ahead and smack. Boom, 201,000 against the Apothecary. Now we are going to go ahead and back out here for the next damage test, which is going to be his AoE skill. So once again, keep in mind a lot of these will probably end up being weak hits because he is weak affinity for this particular stage. Let's go ahead, put all the debuffs out there as we'd like to see. My Lydia now has like 310 speed, which is pretty nice. So let's go ahead, let's do that AoE, and boom, we're seeing about 136 to about 150 across the board. Again, his AoE doesn't have the best multipliers, but for an epic damage dealer, this is pretty damn good damage as well. Now, also, if you had a Hex in here, I would imagine most of these champions are essentially going to be dead. Let's go ahead. Let's move to a stage where he would actually be strong against it, right? So he is a Spirit Affinity damage dealer, which also means he's going to be strong against Force champions. So if there's any sort of stages or, you know, teams or anything like that that you're struggling against that are predominantly Force-based, he might be able to assist with that as well. So something else to consider. Let's go ahead and get our debuffs out. And let's go ahead and do the AoE smack here. Let's see what he's capable of doing. Boom! We had about 140 there on some of those champions. Once again, we're going to go ahead and back out. We're going to run this one more time, essentially just so that we can see what he's capable of doing on that A1 in all of its juicy goodness. Now, of course, if you did bring in an increased crit damage skill and everything like that as well, he would definitely do some additional stuff, right? So let's go ahead and hit the Sentinel here, the defense-based champion. Boom! We have 195,000 damage on a single hit, which was enough to block revive. We didn't even need that second hit. That means that his A1 is capable of hitting for almost 400,000, which is just absolutely insane from an epic champion. You know, even though he has good gear, you still need damn good multipliers to do that. Now, I do actually want to go ahead and showcase him against this team here. I did run a test run against it earlier, and this will kind of show where he's nice, right? So we have High Mother Mod, and we have Cardinal, two very strong revive champions, right? We do actually get the Stone Skin block resisted there, essentially on that guy. I forgot his name. But we're going to come in and we're going to see what Fenax is capable of, right? So we're going to slow it down. We're going to target High Mother Mod, and boom! He gets 97k on the initial hit, doesn't even need to place the secondary hit, and she now has block revive on her. Cardinal, not going to be able to revive, right? We're going to go ahead and try hit down Wixwell here as well. Boom! 71k, single hit, didn't need anything additional. Now, we do just have to survive the last hit from this guy, but I do think that should be perfectly okay. We're going to go ahead and do some skill resets here. Obviously, Fenax doesn't exactly need that. He hasn't used his skills yet. Let's go ahead, increase our speed, our turn meter, and our attack. We'll go ahead. We'll just hit into him here. Not too much else we can do. These stone skins are being pretty pesky, and they don't want to come off, unfortunately. We'll go ahead and buff up a little bit as well. And he does one tap us, unfortunately, because that guy is absolutely insane. But you get the idea, certainly. Let's go ahead and see if there's some other champions that we can face. So, for example, a team like this might be a great showcase as well. Of course, Sun Wukong combined with UDK is one of the most annoying combinations that you can run against inside the game. Now, if everything goes well, we'll be able to strip off that stone skin, and we'll be able to slam into the Wukong, even though he's protected by the UDK, right? So let's go ahead and do this. So obviously, he has debuffs. It means there's going to be a secondary hit. UDK is going to soak up the first hit, but then Wukong gets the second one. Boom, boom. 81,000 damage, block revive, placed on the Sun Wukong. There's not really anything he can do about it. Done and dusted. Let's go ahead. Let's get some resets going out here as well. There, Rhonda is underneath Stone Skin as well, which is a little bit annoying to say the least. So she has to take her turn. She wasn't locked out either, which is unfortunate. And she does, of course, kill us, which is, again, unfortunate. So you'd probably benefit from having a little bit more of a tanky team surrounding this guy, right? A very good champion pairing would be somebody like a Freya, who can essentially keep him alive and ensure that he gets an instant turn if somebody kills him. Or if they would have killed him, essentially. Obviously, having him in a Stone Skin set is going to be very, very strong. Having him inside of something like a, reaction or even swift parry, if you have good enough gear for that, is going to be very, very strong. Pairing him with a Necrit, if you happen to have that champion, would be incredible as well. Basically, just any sort of strong revive or, protector champions is what you're looking for on this guy. So let's go ahead. Let's see who we can sit down here. We do have a neutral matchup against the Narcies. Boom, we get 51 and 69,000 damage against them respectively, and he's going to go ahead and sit them down without too much issue there. Let's go ahead, let's do that. Let's get a sleep on the White Queen here, just so that she can't cleanse or anything. I didn't notice if she actually had like her cooldowns increased. Now we're going to go ahead, we're going to get the double hit on the Armands here, and hopefully, oh, it wasn't enough to get through it. It wasn't quite enough because the second one was a weak hit. Otherwise, we probably would have gone ahead and sat him down. I think we'll do the block debuffs there just in case he comes out. We don't have him stunning us. That'd be very unfortunate. We're going to go ahead and try to sleep him, but of course now White Queen does go ahead and eat that sleep essentially. It would be very strong as well to build Fenax inside something like reflex, or any sort of, you know, retaliation, those sorts of sets essentially that are going to be counter-attacking, right? So obviously want to build him for damage, but any sort of either masteries or sets that are going to allow him to counterattack would be absolutely fantastic. Now, obviously I'm not necessarily running him with the most optimal team for this, so we'll also go ahead and show something like this, right? So let's go ahead and bring in a little bit more of a tanky team here. Let's go ahead and bring in somebody like a White Queen. I do still want to go fast, which means I probably will bring in maybe like a Lady Mikage. Now with this, we are of course going to get hit by the Hegemon. And the cool thing about getting hit by the Hegemon is it doesn't really matter because we are just focused on using his A1, of course. So even if he locks us out, places decreased speed, decreases our turn meter, whatever he does, I just do not care, because as soon as I get a turn, it is essentially all over for them, right? So let's go ahead here. We're going to place the AoE stun, which now gives us essentially, to some extent at least, the free range to say, hey, which one of these champions do I want to kill? So for example, Lady Mikage is now out of the fight. We just did almost 100k to her with an epic champion, which is absolutely insane. We do have the debuffs up on everybody once again, so no matter what, we can essentially just go ahead and pick which champion we want to kill, and that's going to be Armands. Armands is going to sit down. We just did 90k to him without question, and again, it doesn't really matter what Hegemon does, because if he blocks us out, we don't care. We're only using our A1, right? So, you know, block active skills, I don't mind. You're just going to go ahead and sit down anyways. And now it's just the Arbiter left, right? So if you pulled Fenax, congratulations, you've gotten yourself one of the best epic damage dealing champions in the entire game based off of raw damage. Obviously, if you run him in Spider 10, and then you show me a run where you ran, you know, Mordecai or an HP burner or something like that, and you're like, well, Mordecai actually does more damage. Well, that's cool. He's doing it based off HP burns, right? So at a basic level of just straight up damage dealing by hitting the enemy, Fenax is probably the strongest epic champion that we have in the game currently, so it's very interesting to see how he gets played, especially in live arena. And I'm in gold 3 live arena myself, so it's always refreshing to see an epic champion actually get picked when he does. So that being said, hopefully this guide was helpful for you guys. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them down in the comments, of course. As always, I'll see you guys in the next video.